Hey guys, this is Pastor Frazier at Canton Baptist Temple, and I hope that your week is off to a good start. Today we are in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 8. I've decided all throughout this week, as we are reading through the Gospel of Matthew in our Bible reading schedule, that I would look at a few verses in each chapter throughout this week. And so we're looking at Matthew chapter 8, and I'd like to read verses 23 through 27. And when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. And his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And he saith unto them, Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? This is a great story here in Matthew chapter 8. And by the way, it's in two of the other Gospels as well. It's in Mark chapter 4 and also in the Gospel of Luke chapter 8. I want to give you 5 very quick thoughts that come from this story. Number 1, you can be in the center of God's will and still face unexpected storms. If you look again at verse 23, notice at the very end of that verse, it says, his disciples followed him. The disciples were following Jesus. They were living their lives in obedience to Jesus. And yet they still faced an unexpected storm. So is the same in our lives. We can be doing the will of God. We can be obeying His word and living our lives in a way that would be pleasing to Him and still face storms in life. You need to be reminded that just because you're facing a storm does not mean necessarily that there's sin in your life. There are other reasons why God allows storms in our lives, as we will see in a moment. But notice again, they were following Him, and yet they faced an unexpected storm. Number 2, we need to remember that when we go through the storms of life, Jesus is with us. He's in the boat here. Now he's asleep. You say, why is he asleep? Well, keep in mind that Jesus was 100% human. So I think the obvious answer is the reason why he was asleep was he was tired. But number 2, I think we need to realize that even though the disciples were panicking because of the storm, the Lord never panics about anything. And so he is with them in the storm. They were doing whatever they could to somehow or another keep the ship from sinking, until finally we see our third thought, and that is the storms of life help us to understand our need for the Lord. And in verse 25, they cry out, Lord, save us, we perish. We need the storms of life to teach us that we really cannot live our lives independent of God. We are to be constantly depending upon Him. And the disciples realized in their own power they weren't going to get through this storm. And so they cried out to the Lord, and the Lord intervened. That brings me to my fourth thought. The storms of life are meant to strengthen our faith. Verse 26, he says, Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? I've said it before, but I'll say it again. We learn more spiritual lessons in the valleys of life than we do on the mountaintop experiences. When we go through the storms of life, that's when we learn some very valuable spiritual lessons. And we see that here, that their faith was being strengthened. When all was said and done, their faith in the Lord Jesus was stronger than ever. And so it will be with us. And then number 5, the Lord has the power to cause the storm, and He has the power to calm the storm. Now here we see that He is calming the storm. And in verse 27, they say, What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey Him? Well, it's the God-man, the Lord Jesus, the one who created heaven and earth, and He has all power over heaven and earth. And so He was able to calm the storm. I'm reminded of a couple of verses over in Psalm 107. Psalm 107 verse 25 says, For He commandeth, and raiseth the stormy wind, which lifteth up the waves thereof. Now notice in that verse, the Lord is causing the storm. Sometimes the Lord causes storms in our lives. And then we see in Psalm 107, verse 29, He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Sometimes the Lord causes the storms, and sometimes He calms the storms. These are some lessons that we can learn from Matthew chapter 8 concerning the storm. You can be in the will of God and face an unexpected storm. We need to remember that no matter what storm we're going through, the Lord is with us. We need to also remember that the storms of life cause us to realize our need for the Lord in our lives. And then also the storms of life are meant to strengthen our faith. What we are going through right now with this COVID-19 crisis, not only in our country, but around the world, we as believers need to understand God's at work. He's working even in our own personal lives, strengthening our faith, causing us to trust Him more than ever before. And the Lord has the power to not only cause the storm, but also calm the storm. I hope this devotion has been a blessing to you today. And tomorrow we'll be in Matthew chapter 9. I hope that you'll join us. If the devotion was a blessing to you and you'd like to share it with somebody else, hit that share button, and that way others can be encouraged as well. God bless you.